The morning of hope. The sound of screeching tires and shattering glass tore through the quiet morning like a scream in church. For a moment, Malik Johnson's world froze. His reflection in the cracked side mirror, his trembling hands gripping the steering wheel. The silence that followed too sharp to be real. Then came the pounding of his heart, wild and disoriented, louder than the engine struggling beneath him. The car hadn't crashed, not yet. But that sound, that violent echo, came from somewhere down the road, maybe a few hundred feet ahead. He didn't know it yet, but this morning would change everything. His future, his beliefs, even the man he thought he was. He sat there for a heartbeat, unsure whether to keep driving toward his dream interview or toward the sound of someone else's disaster. The early sunlight sliced through the windshield, catching the edge of his suit jacket, pressed but old, borrowed from his uncle, and for a fleeting second, he imagined himself walking through those glass company doors downtown, shaking hands with executives who might finally see him for who he really was. His chest swelled with that image. He had promised his mother that this time, life would change. That this interview was his ticket out of years of rejection and part-time jobs that barely paid rent. The radio crackled softly with a gospel song his mother loved. "Hold on. Change is coming." Malik exhaled, whispered a half-laugh, half-prayer, and tapped the steering wheel in rhythm to calm his nerves. The morning air still smelled like rain, thick and humid. Somewhere behind him, the neighborhood stirred. Kids chasing buses, dogs barking, life carrying on. Ahead, though, there was something else. Something is wrong. He pressed the gas lightly, rolling closer to where the sound had come from. And then he saw it. A black Mercedes on the shoulder, one tire flattened against the asphalt, smoke still curling faintly from the rim. An older man stood beside it, waving helplessly, his face pale beneath a gray fedora. Cars sped past indifferent. The world, as always, was in too much of a hurry to care. Malik checked the time. 8:42 a.m. He had 18 minutes left to make it across town, through traffic and into the office where his life could begin again. He gritted his teeth. Every logical cell in his body screamed at him to keep driving. That job wasn't just another opportunity. It was the opportunity. A position at Rixson Technologies, one of the most respected companies in the state. He'd spent months preparing, saving for a bus pass, borrowing a car, rehearsing every answer, every handshake. His mother had even ironed his shirt the night before, humming old Al Green songs like she used to when he was a boy. But the man on the side of the road, something about him made Malik hesitate. Maybe it was the way he kept glancing at passing cars with a kind of disbelief, as though the world had abandoned him. Maybe it was the faint tremble in his hands. Malik thought of his own father, long gone, a man whose car had once broken down on a dark highway. No one had stopped for him either. He had walked miles in the cold and never made it back home. Malik still remembered the knock on the door that changed everything. Now, years later, faced with another man in need, Malik felt that same ache stir deep inside. He looked at the time again, 8:43. His chance at the future he'd dreamed of was slipping through his fingers, second by second. He swore under his breath, drumming the steering wheel. "Come on, Malik, think," he whispered to himself. "You can't save the whole world." But even as he said it, his foot moved to the brake. The car slowed, shuddered, and stopped beside the stranded Mercedes. The old man looked up, startled, relief washing over his face. Malik rolled down his window. "You okay, sir?" The man nodded shakily. "Flat tire. I've been here for half an hour. Roadside service says another hour. My phone's dying. You wouldn't happen to know how to change a tire, would you?" Malik hesitated. He could hear the ticking clock in his head, the weight of all his mother's hopes pressing against his ribs. He could also hear his father's voice. "Character's what you do when nobody's watching." He smiled tightly. "Yeah," he said at last. "I can help." The man sighed with visible relief. "God bless you, son." As Malik stepped out, the heat of the sun hit his face. He slipped off his jacket, knelt by the tire, and began loosening the bolts, his white shirt streaking with grease. The old man leaned on the car, studying him. "You're a good one," he said. "Not many would stop today." Malik didn't answer. Sweat rolled down his forehead. His mind was racing, calculating how long it would take, whether he could still make it, whether this moment of kindness would cost him everything. He could almost see his mother's face when he told her he'd gotten the job. The way her tired eyes would light up. the relief that would pour out of her shoulders after years of worry. That image pushed him to work faster. But when he looked up at the clock on his dashboard again, it was already 8:59, and for the first time, the fear hit him hard. He was going to miss the interview. Still, he tightened the last bolt, lowered the car, and stood up, wiping his hands on his pants. The man thanked him again, trying to offer him money, but Malik shook his head. "Just pay it forward someday," he said quietly. He climbed back into his car, started the engine, and drove off, unaware that the man he had just helped wasn't an ordinary stranger. He was the one person who could rewrite Malik's entire future, and fate had just begun to turn its wheel. The road of decision, the city stretched ahead like a mirage, glimmering glass towers rising from the heat, each one a promise Malik could almost touch. But between him and that dream now lay 15 precious minutes, a thin line of hope dissolving faster than the morning haze. He checked the clock again, 9:01 a.m. His stomach tightened. The interview had started at 9. Maybe they'd wait. Maybe traffic had delayed other candidates too. He tried to convince himself, but deep down he knew corporate worlds didn't forgive lateness. Not for men like him. The old man's car grew smaller in the rearview mirror, but his voice still echoed in Malik's head. Calm, grateful, oddly familiar. "You're a good one." Something about that tone lingered. It wasn't just polite. It carried a weight like a man used to being listened to. Malik brushed it off. He couldn't afford to think about it now. He pressed the gas harder, weaving through traffic, his knuckles white on the wheel. Rain clouds gathered suddenly, casting a pale shadow over the highway. It was supposed to be a bright day, yet the sky darkened as if to remind him that fate had other plans. A single raindrop splashed against the windshield, then another, until the world blurred into streaks of silver. Malik's mind raced as fast as his car. He thought of all the interviews before, the polite rejections, the unspoken hesitation when they saw him walk in. The way they'd glance at his resume, then at his skin, and smile the same hollow smile that said, "You're impressive, but not for us." He'd learned to mask the sting, to thank them for their time and walk out with his shoulders straight. This time was supposed to be different. This company, Rickson Technologies, was known for hiring on merit. He'd read stories about their CEO, a man who started from nothing, who claimed to value grit over pedigree. Malik believed in that. Believed that finally someone might see him not as a statistic, but as a man who never gave up. He took a hard turn into the downtown ramp, tires squealing on the wet asphalt. The dashboard clock blinked at 9:07. His chest pounded like a drum. He was close, just a few blocks now. Maybe if he explained what happened. Maybe if he spoke to someone reasonable. But traffic was crawling. Horns blared, buses hissed, and somewhere to his right a cyclist cursed at a passing cab. Malik's patience cracked. He slammed the heel of his hand against the steering wheel. "Come on!" He pictured his mother sitting by the window, hands folded, waiting for his call. She had always believed his kindness would lead him somewhere. "Your heart will open doors your resume can't," she'd said. He wanted to believe her, but right now his heart felt like a liability. Then, something strange happened. At the next intersection, as Malik waited for the light, a sleek black sedan pulled up beside him, the same make and color as the car he had just fixed. He blinked, startled. The window rolled down, and for a fraction of a second he thought he saw the old man inside, talking animatedly on a phone. But when he looked again, the car surged ahead through the green light and disappeared into the stream of traffic. Malik frowned. That couldn't be possible. He'd left the man miles back, struggling to call roadside service. Maybe it was a coincidence, the same model, the same color. Still, a chill ran through him, quick and unexplained. By the time he reached the parking lot of Rickson Technologies, his nerves were shot. The rain had turned to drizzle, mist curling around the edges of the tall mirrored building. He parked hastily, wiped his hands on his pants, and stared at his reflection in the side mirror. His tie was crooked, his cuffs were stained with dirt from the tire. He swallowed hard, fixed his collar, and whispered, "You can do this." Inside the lobby, the cold air hit him like a slap. The receptionist, a young woman with sleek hair and sharp eyes, looked up from her desk. "Can I help you?" "Yes, ma'am," he said, trying to catch his breath. "I'm here for the 9 o'clock interview. Malik Johnson." She checked her screen, then gave him that look. the professional kind trained to hide impatience. Mr. Johnson, you were scheduled for 9 sharp. The CEO's team has already gone in. Please, Malik said softly. I was delayed helping someone on the road. It was an emergency. I just need 5 minutes. She hesitated, then shook her head. I'm sorry. Mr. Reed doesn't take late interviews. The name hit him like a slap. Reed. He'd read it before. Walter Reed, the CEO. The man whose story had inspired him to apply. A man who had once driven trucks before founding a multi-million-dollar empire. Malik stood frozen, staring at the closed glass doors of the conference room beyond her desk. He could see shadows moving inside, laughter, movement, life continuing without him. Please, he tried again. Just tell him Malik Johnson was here. She sighed. I'll leave a note, but he's flying out today. Maybe next cycle. Next cycle. A whole year. The words landed like stones. Malik nodded numbly, turned, and walked out. The drizzle had turned to heavy rain now, soaking his clothes as he crossed the parking lot. His car sat under the gray sky, looking as tired as he felt. He leaned against it, hands trembling. He'd done the right thing, and he knew he had. But right now it felt like the world had punished him for it. He sat behind the wheel, silent. The gospel song from earlier began again, faint through static. Hold on. Change is coming. Malik closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, he didn't believe it. Yet somewhere high above, in a corner office of that same building, Walter Reed was staring out through the rain-smeared glass, thinking about the young man who stopped on the road that morning, the one whose name he didn't yet know, but whose face he couldn't forget. The act of kindness, the rain didn't stop that night. It came down in slow, relentless sheets, tapping against the small apartment window like a reminder of everything Malik had lost that day. The city lights blurred in the distance, tiny flickers swallowed by the storm. Inside, the smell of his mother's chicken stew filled the air, warm and comforting, but Malik couldn't bring himself to eat. He sat at the small kitchen table, his head bowed, still wearing the same damp shirt he'd worn to the interview. His mother, Ruth Johnson, watched him quietly from across the table. Years of working double shifts as a nurse had carved deep lines into her face, but her eyes were still sharp. Eyes that saw what her son was too proud to say. You missed it, didn't you? She asked softly. Malik looked up, guilt tightening in his chest. Yeah, Ma, I missed it. She didn't scold him. Didn't ask why. Instead, she stirred her spoon through the stew and said, You did the right thing, didn't you? He hesitated. I helped someone on the highway. Old man, flat tire. I couldn't just drive past him. Ruth smiled faintly, nodding. Then God saw it. That's what matters. But Malik wasn't sure anymore. He wanted to believe her, but faith felt hollow when you were drowning in disappointment. What if that was my only chance, Ma? What if doing the right thing costs me everything? Ruth's spoon paused midair. Then maybe that job wasn't big enough for the man you're meant to be. Her words lingered long after she went to bed, the sound of her cane tapping gently down the hall fading into the hum of the storm. Malik sat there in the dim light, staring at the rain, replaying the moment he'd stopped on that highway. The way the old man had looked at him, the weight behind that tired smile. There was something about it he couldn't shake, something off, like he'd seen more than he was letting on. The next morning, Malik woke to a faint beeping from his phone, a voicemail from an unknown number. He pressed play. Mr. Johnson, a calm, refined voice began. This is Walter Reed's assistant. Mr. Reed would like to thank you for your help yesterday. He insists on meeting you personally. Please call me back. Malik froze. The air left his lungs. Walter Reed, the CEO. The same name printed on every Rixon Technologies brochure, every article he'd ever read. For a moment, the world tilted, and how could that be possible? He called back immediately. The assistant confirmed the meeting. Private, informal, at the Reed estate outside the city. Mr. Reed said you'll recognize the address. The assistant added cryptically before hanging up. Recognize it? Malik didn't understand. He'd never been anywhere near the rich side of town, except for job interviews and delivery shifts. That afternoon, he borrowed his uncle's car again, driving through winding suburban streets lined with iron gates and manicured gardens. The GPS announced, You've arrived, as he stopped before a sprawling estate that looked like something out of a movie, towering oaks, marble statues, and a fountain that glittered beneath the sun. He hesitated before stepping out, adjusting his shirt collar, his palms slick with sweat. A butler greeted him at the door. "Mr. Reed is expecting you," the man said politely, leading him through a grand hallway lined with oil paintings, portraits of men and women who looked powerful, cold, untouchable. Malik felt small among them, his footsteps echoing against marble floors. The butler opened a door to a sunlit study overlooking the garden, and there he was, Walter Reed, the same old man from the highway, seated in a leather chair, a file open before him. For a moment, neither spoke. Walter studied Malik carefully, his eyes sharp, almost searching. "You look surprised," he said finally. I didn't expect this," Malik managed. "I imagine you didn't," Walter said with a thin smile. "Most people wouldn't stop for a stranger on a busy road, especially when they have something important waiting. But you did." Malik shifted, unsure how to respond. "I just did what anyone would have done." Walter's smile faded. "No, not anyone. That's why I wanted to see you." He gestured for Malik to sit. On the desk lay a stack of documents, a silver watch, and Malik's resume. His heart skipped. "You were heading to Rickson Technologies," Walter said, tapping the paper lightly. "For the management trainee position." Malik nodded slowly. "Yes, sir, I didn't make it." "I know," Walter said, voice low. "My HR department mentioned a candidate who arrived after we left. I read your file. Impressive background. But that's not what caught my attention." Malik frowned. "Then what did?" Walter leaned forward. His eyes weren't soft now, they were calculating. "When you stopped on that road, I wasn't stranded by accident." The words landed like thunder. Malik blinked. "What do you mean?" Walter's expression didn't change. "I've done that for years. Random roads. Random days. You'd be surprised how few people stop. It tells me more about humanity than any resume ever could." He paused. "You, Mr. Johnson, were the first in 6 months." Malik's mind spun. "So, you were testing people?" Walter nodded slowly. "In a way. Call it my personal experiment. I wanted to see who still believes in doing right when no one's watching." Malik stared at him, disbelief and anger swirling together. "So you're telling me I missed my interview because of your test?" Walter's lips curved slightly. "You didn't miss it, son. You passed it." The silence that followed felt heavy, electric. Malik sat there, torn between relief and outrage, unsure if this was fate's reward or another cruel trick. Then Walter stood, extending his hand. "Welcome to Rickson Technologies, Mr. Johnson. Let's see what integrity looks like when given power." But as Malik shook that hand, a strange unease crept into him. There was something in Walter's eyes, something hidden behind the warmth, a shadow that whispered this was only the beginning. "You said." The collapse of dreams. Malik couldn't stop thinking about that handshake. It was firm but cold, the kind of grip that made you question whether you'd just been welcomed or quietly claimed. Walter Reed's eyes had glimmered with something more than kindness. Curiosity, maybe calculation. That night Malik lay awake staring at the ceiling of his small bedroom, the hum of the city faint outside his window. He should have felt elated. He'd gotten the job. A miracle born from a moment of decency, but his chest ached with something heavier than doubt. By morning, he was sitting in the lobby of Rickson Technologies, signing onboarding papers. Everything about the place felt pristine, clinical. White marble floors, chrome elevators, a constant buzz of quiet efficiency. Employees passed him with polite smiles, but none stopped long enough to meet his eyes. His new ID badge hung cold against his chest, the Rickson logo gleaming like a seal of ownership. A woman named Lillian from HR handed him a folder. "Mr. Reed was very clear," she said briskly. "You're not starting as an entry-level trainee. You've been assigned to a confidential project under direct supervision from the CEO." Malik blinked. "Confidential?" She gave a professional smile that revealed nothing. "You'll be briefed upstairs." Upstairs meant the top floor, the kind of floor he'd only ever seen in movies. A private elevator, gold-trimmed doors and silence that pressed against his eardrums. When the doors opened, he found himself in a long hallway lined with frosted glass. Walter was waiting in a corner office, back to the window, watching the skyline. "Good to see you, Malik," Walter said without turning. "Sit down." Malik obeyed, still clutching the folder. Walter finally faced him, his expression unreadable. "I like to test people before I trust them. You passed the first test in character under pressure. Now comes the second." Malik's pulse quickened. Sir, I'm grateful for the opportunity, but I'm not sure what. Walter raised a hand, silencing him. You'll learn soon enough. He pressed a button on his desk phone. Send in Mr. Harland. A tall, broad-shouldered man entered, older with a soldier's posture and an expression like carved stone. Walter gestured between them. Malik, this is Jonathan Harland, head of security. You'll be shadowing him for the next few weeks. Security? Malik was confused. I thought I was in management training. Walter smiled thinly. You will be. But first you'll learn how the company really works. That phrase, and how the company really works, sounding unsettled him. Harland said nothing, only nodded for Malik to follow. They walked down a back corridor that didn't appear on the building's main layout. Keycard access, biometric scanners, layers of security that made Malik's stomach knot tighter. They entered a sub-level elevator that descended instead of rising. When the doors opened, Malik stepped into a cavernous room humming with machines, servers stacked to the ceiling, cables twisting like veins. Rows of monitors glowed in the dim light, each displaying streams of encrypted data, faces, addresses, numbers. What is this place? He asked. Harland's voice was gravel. Compliance division. We ensure loyalty from clients, employees, and competitors. Malik frowned. Loyalty? You mean background checks? Harland smirked. Something like that. Walter appeared behind them, his footsteps soft but commanding. Information is the world's most powerful currency, Malik. People think Rickson builds technology, but what we really build is trust, and we keep it by knowing everything. A chill crept down Malik's spine. You spy on people? Walter's eyes narrowed. We protect our interests. Don't confuse morality with survival. For the first time, Malik saw the cracks in the image he'd built of Walter Reed, the humble, self-made CEO. There was ruthlessness in him, a quiet belief that good intentions were weaknesses to be exploited. Over the next week, Malik shadowed Harland, learning how data was collected and manipulated. He saw files on employees, their debts, family histories, even private messages. Every night his conscience screamed louder. This wasn't integrity. It was control. He thought about quitting more than once, but each time he remembered his mother's pride, her tears when he told her he'd finally made it. He couldn't take that away from her. Not yet. Then one evening, while reviewing an encrypted folder, Malik noticed something strange. A file marked Project Providence. It was tagged with restricted access, yet his credentials somehow allowed him in. Curiosity overruled fear. He opened it. Inside were photos, not of competitors or clients, but of people from his own neighborhood. His mother, his friends, even his old landlord. Alongside each name were notes, medical histories, bank details, surveillance timestamps. Malik's blood ran cold. What the hell is this? He whispered. Before he could close the file, a reflection flickered on the screen. Walter, standing silently behind him. I see you found Providence, Walter said calmly. Malik shot to his feet. You're spying on innocent people. My family, why? Walter stepped closer, his face calm but his eyes sharp as glass. Because I needed to know who you were before I gave you everything. Every person you've ever cared about was part of your test. Malik stared, disbelief turning to horror. You used my mother? You invaded her life for a test? Walter didn't blink. Integrity is expensive, Malik. I had to be sure yours was real. Malik backed away, his heart pounding. You're insane. Walter smiled, and that same thin, chilling smile. No, son. I'm practical. The world rewards power, not sentiment. You wanted to climb? This is the ladder. Malik shook his head. Then I'm not part of this. He turned to leave, but Harland blocked the door. Walter's voice hardened. You can't walk away now. You've seen too much, Malik's breath caught. The hum of the servers filled the silence. Walter leaned closer. Think carefully. You help me and your life changes forever. You defy me, and you'll wish you'd driven past me on that road. The words hung like smoke in the air. Malik's world tilted again. The savior he'd helped had turned into a captor. And as the lights flickered in that underground room, one truth hit him harder than all the rest. He hadn't been chosen for his kindness. He'd been trapped by it. The unexpected call, the days that followed, blurred into a haze of dread and disbelief. Malik barely slept, haunted by the memory of that underground room, The screens full of names, the faces of people he knew. The cold satisfaction in Walter's voice as he revealed how deeply he had been watching. The rain outside had become a constant companion, streaking against his apartment window as if the sky itself refused to look away from what he'd seen. He tried to keep calm. I tried to believe there was still a way out. But every step he took reminded him that he was being watched. His phone pinged once with a blank message. Then again. Each time, the same word appeared on the screen in bold letters. Loyalty. He knew it came from Rickson's internal system. Harlan must have access to his data, his calls, maybe even the camera. Every shadow in his apartment started to look like a secret observer. He thought about going to the police, but what could he say? That the CEO of one of the largest corporations in the country was secretly running a surveillance operation? They would laugh him out of the station, or worse, call Walter himself. Power like that didn't face consequences. It erased them. On the third night, Malik's mother called. "You sound tired, baby," she said gently. "Are they treating you right?" He tried to keep his voice steady. "Yeah, Ma, just long hours. New job stress, you know?" She murmured. "I saw someone parked across the street last night. A dark car, engine running. You think that's one of those neighborhood patrols?" Malik's blood froze. He forced a small laugh. "Probably, Ma, don't worry about it." But inside his heart was pounding. They were watching her. The thought burned in his chest until his hands shook. That night, he sat at his small desk and opened his laptop, pulling up the files he'd copied from the Rickson servers. He hadn't meant to steal anything. He'd only wanted proof of what Walter was doing. But when he found out they had profiles on thousands of ordinary citizens, teachers, nurses, small business owners, he couldn't let it go. Every person had been labeled, categorized, and ranked under headings like influence, vulnerability, and control risk. His own name was there too, tagged as emotional asset, test subject A47. He stared at the screen until tears blurred the words. All his life he'd believed doing the right thing meant something, that decency could still open doors. But now his kindness had made him a pawn. The next morning he arrived at Rickson with a plan, not fully formed, but desperate. He had the files on a hidden flash drive. He'd get into Walter's office, confront him, and record everything. If he could expose this, maybe the truth could still matter. But Walter seemed almost to anticipate his arrival. The moment Malik stepped into the top-floor lobby, the receptionist smiled coldly. "Mr. Reed is expecting you." His stomach sank. Walter's office felt darker today, the curtains drawn against the sun. The older man stood by the window, his silhouette sharp against the dim light. "You've been busy," he said without turning. "I told you not to dig too deep." Malik clenched his fists. "You lied to me. You said you valued integrity. All you value is control." Walter turned slowly, his face calm but eyes blazing with quiet fury. "Control is integrity, Malik. Order is built on it. You think freedom means anything without structure? Without oversight? You of all people should understand that. The world has never given you fairness, it gave you chances to obey." Malik's voice shook. "You used my mother. You used me." Walter's expression softened for the first time. "No, son. I gave you purpose. I saw potential in you when no one else did." "Don't call me that," Walter sighed. "You think you can stop me? Do you know how many people depend on the system I built? How many governments use our technology? The world runs on secrets, Malik. I just make sure they're safe in the right hands." "Your hands," Malik snapped. Walter's lips curved into a faint smile. "Exactly." The room felt suffocating, the air thick with menace. Malik reached into his jacket pocket, touching the flash drive like a hidden weapon. "You can't bury the truth forever," he said quietly. Walter's eyes flicked down. "You have something that belongs to me." Malik froze. How did he know? The office door opened. Harlan entered, closing it behind him with deliberate calm. "Mr. Reed," he said, voice low. "It confirms the data breach. Traced it to this unit." He turned toward Malik, his gaze cold as steel. Walter nodded slowly. "I warned you, Malik. You should have trusted me." For a moment, no one moved. Then Walter's tone softened, almost paternal. "Give it to me and walk away. I'll forget this happened. You'll still have your job, your salary, your future." Malik looked at him, every muscle trembling. The offer sounded so easy. Just hand over the truth and pretend none of it mattered. But his mother's voice echoed in his mind. do what's right even when no one's watching. He took a step back instead.
No, he whispered.
Not this time. Walter's expression hardened instantly. Then I can't protect you anymore. Before Malik could react, Harlan lunged forward, grabbing his wrist. The flash drive slipped from his hand, skidding across the polished floor. Malik broke free and dove for it, but Harlan was faster. He kicked it away, sending it sliding under Walter's desk. Enough, Walter said coldly. Take him downstairs. Harlan reached for him again, but Malik shoved a chair into his path and bolted for the door. Security alarms began to blare, red lights flashing across the ceiling. Employees turned in confusion as Malik sprinted through the corridors. He didn't know where he was going, only that if he stopped now, he'd disappear like all the others whose names were buried in those files. As he burst into the stairwell, the sound of boots echoed behind him. Walter's voice rang out faintly through the intercom. You made your choice, Malik. Now survive it. And for the first time in his life, Malik realized this wasn't about a job or justice or even revenge. It was about survival. He gripped the railing, heart pounding as he fled downward into the dark. The truth was out there, hidden in his blood, in his courage, and he would risk everything to make sure the world saw it. But somewhere above, behind locked doors, Walter smiled to himself and whispered to no one in particular. He's finally ready. The reward of integrity. The stairwell echoed with the rhythm of Malik's pounding footsteps, each thud a heartbeat of desperation. The alarms screamed through the Rickson building like sirens of war, their red flashes painting the concrete walls and pulses of danger. His lungs burned, his legs trembled, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Somewhere behind him, Harlan's boots thundered down the steps, closer with every echo. Malik clutched the railing, pushing himself faster, heart hammering like a trapped bird. He burst through a maintenance door and stumbled into the basement loading bay. The rain outside had started again, heavier now, turning the city into a blur of gray and silver. The sound was deafening. He looked around, wild-eyed, until he spotted the glowing outline of a security panel near the exit. He sprinted to it, slammed his ID badge against the scanner, and prayed it still worked. The door clicked open. Freedom. Malik sprinted into the downpour, soaked instantly. The streets were nearly empty, headlights streaking through the rain like ghosts. He ducked into an alley, breathing hard, trying to think. The flash drive was gone, lost beneath Walter's desk, but he still had something more valuable. Memory. He knew what he'd seen and he could tell the world. But as he reached for his phone, it vibrated before he could dial. The caller ID froze him. Private number. He hesitated, then answered. Running in the rain suits you. Walter's voice drawled, calm as ever. Malik stopped cold. How do you... I told you, Malik, we see everything. Every step, every breath. You're impressive, though. Most men would have begged by now. You're a monster, Malik spat. I'm going to expose you. Walter's tone didn't change. You think the truth can hurt me? I built the system that buries it. But here's the part you don't understand. This was never about destroying you. It was about building you. What the hell are you talking about? There was a pause, and then Walter said something that made Malik's blood run cold. You're my son. The world tilted, the sound of the rain fading to a dull roar in his ears. You're lying, Malik whispered. I wish I were, Walter said softly. Your mother and I. It was years ago. Before the company. Before I became this, I checked the DNA the moment I saw you. You have my eyes, my stubbornness. I wanted to see what kind of man you became without my influence. Malik's chest constricted. Memories flashed. His mother's insistence on honesty, her quiet refusal to talk about his father, the faint sadness in her eyes whenever he asked. You used me, he said hoarsely. All of this, your test, your company, your lies, was just a game to you? Walter's voice darkened. Not a game, a legacy. You think I want this empire to die with men like Harlan? No, it needs someone with conscience, someone with your blood. I'd rather burn it to the ground, Malik snapped. Walter chuckled quietly. That's the problem with good men. They mistake destruction for justice. The line went dead. Malik stood there, numb, the phone still pressed to his ear as rainwater streamed down his face like tears. He didn't know what hurt more, the betrayal or the realization that somewhere deep inside, a part of him had always wondered who his father really was. Now he wished he hadn't found out, but then something shifted. Through the storm, he saw flashing blue lights approaching from the distance. Police cars, dozens of them, converging on the Rickson building. He blinked, confused, until his phone buzzed again, this time with a message. Unknown sender. No words, just a video file. He opened it. The screen showed Walter in his office, standing beside Harland. Malik's voice, recorded from the hidden security cameras, played through the speakers. You used my mother. You used me. Then Walter's response echoed. Integrity is expensive, Malik. I had to be sure yours was real. Someone inside had leaked it. The footage spread online within hours. By morning, it was on every major network. Headlines screamed, Tech Empire Exposed. Rickson CEO's secret surveillance program revealed. Government investigators swarmed the company. Walter Reed resigned before they could arrest him, vanishing from public sight. Harland was taken into custody, his empire of secrets collapsing piece by piece. For the first time in months, Malik could breathe. Weeks later, he visited his mother's porch as the evening sun dipped low, casting gold across the cracked steps. Ruth looked up from her rocking chair, smiling faintly. You look lighter, baby. Like the storm finally passed. He sat beside her, watching the sky fade into deep violet. Maybe it did. She reached over, touching his hand. I heard what happened. That man, Walter, was he? Malik hesitated. Yeah, he said finally. He was my father. Ruth's eyes softened, sadness mixed with relief. I always knew someday the truth would find you. I just prayed it wouldn't break you. It didn't, Malik said quietly. It woke me up. They sat in silence as the first stars appeared. The air smelled of rain and renewal. Later, Malik stood gazing at the distant horizon. You know, Ma, he said softly, I used to think doing the right thing cost too much. But now I see it's the only thing that keeps us free. Ruth smiled through her tears. That's my boy. The next morning, Malik received a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a simple note in Walter's handwriting. You were right. The world needs men like you more than it needs men like me. Build something honest. WR. And beneath it a single key, engraved with the Rickson logo. Malik stared at it for a long time before placing it in his pocket. He didn't know if it opened a vault, a building, or a past still waiting to be healed. All he knew was that his story wasn't ending. It was beginning again, shaped not by betrayal or power, but by choice. As he walked down the quiet street, the morning sun broke through the clouds at last. The world for once felt still, and in that silence, Malik understood the lesson Walter never could. That true strength isn't built on control or secrets. It's built on the courage to be kind when the world teaches you to be cruel.